Hi, I'm Keith Abell. I've been a pharmacist now since 1995, but my journey didn't stop at prescriptions. I entered pharmacy to help people heal, but early on, I realized something unsettling. Healthcare wasn't about wellness. It was about pharmaceuticals. And disease? It's not caused by deficiency in prescription drugs, but healthcare is all about managing disease with prescription drugs and not healing the disease. That realization changed everything. I believe the body is divinely designed with the ability to repair, restore, and thrive when given the right support. That's why I've spent my career focusing on nutrition and supplementation, not just to help people survive, but to help them truly thrive, to live their life to the fullest. Then came COVID, and like so many others, I faced it head on. But the long-term effects didn't fade. They lingered. And that personal experience lit a fire in me, a passion to dig deeper, to ask harder questions, and uncover solutions that go beyond symptom management. Now, at nearly 65, I'm not winding down. I'm just getting started. Because what I found in this research, especially around immune health and transfer factors, is too important to keep quiet. People deserve to know. They deserve truth. They deserve the tools, and they deserve hope. And that's why I'm here, to share what I've learned, to empower others, and to help you reclaim your health, your autonomy, and your future. My mission? To empower people with truth, tools, and a community so you can take back control of your health and your future. Now, if you care at all about long-term wellness and the truth behind what's really happening in the body after COVID and the messenger RNA vaccines, you're in the right place. Today, we're unpacking the spike protein controversy, what it is, and what two top medical experts are warning us about, and what it means for your immune system. But we're also going a little bit deeper, because for millions of people, the story didn't end with recovery. It evolved into something more complex, more persistent, and more misunderstood. We're talking about long COVID, the lingering symptoms, the immune confusion, the silent struggle that's reshaping lives and healthcare systems around the world. And I'll introduce something powerful that you may not know about, transfer factors. These are tiny molecules with a big mission to help your immune system remember, respond, and recover. In a time when immune dysfunction and chronic inflammation are stealing energy, clarity, and resilience from so many folks, these molecules may be more relevant than ever before. So let's dive in. Let's begin with the first expert voice that sparked widespread concern and deepened this conversation. Dr. Peter McCullough is one of the most published cardiologists in America, and he's been sounding the alarm about what's really happening post-COVID and post-vaccine. He's reviewed extensive pathology and clinical cases, and what he is seeing is troubling. Watch what he has to say.
Almost as if the entire world has been poisoned.
Okay.
Either with the infection, SARS-CoV-2, or with the vaccine, or both. Estimates are 97% of us got this illness. Here's the virus here. The spike protein is the spine on the surface of the virus. The human coronavirus, we could get infected with these. The spike protein, we now know with very good investigation from the House Subcommittee investigations on the origins of this, it was engineered in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. It's not a naturally occurring protein. It has all kinds of features to it that we've never seen in medicine. Listen, I'm a cardiologist. I've been in practice for decades. I've never seen a protein that can cause heart damage, can erode blood vessels in the brain and directly cause brain hemorrhage, can cause blood clots, can incite autoimmunity where the body's immune system fights itself, and that turns off cancer surveillance systems to allow cancers to begin to accelerate into turbo cancer. I've never seen such a toxic protein in my life. It turns out we have evidence that those who had the infection have been exposed to this. Some actually have this in their body. And clearly those who took the vaccine have the entire length of the spike protein in large quantities. And now...
And keep dosing themselves with more and more
right.
and more. Which is,
very few people are, but we have evidence, and with no funding. Remember, Health and Human Services, even with the new team, has no request for applications to investigate what the spike protein has done to the human body. The Biden administration spent $1 billion on long COVID. No spike protein projects. Don't look over here. There's a mass oblivion to the problem of the spike protein, but I can tell you, I have patients in my practice, and we're working with a research lab in Germany. We have evidence of Pfizer, Moderna physically in the human body, and spike protein being produced everywhere in the body, circulating in bloodstream 3.2 years after the shots. We can find it in biopsies in tissues. This is alarming. People should be alarmed that this messenger RNA has been synthetically altered through a process called pseudouridination. There's no known human enzymes that can break down the messenger RNA. The spike protein, no human enzymes known that can break it down. But let me tell you what, humanity could be in for an incredibly difficult time. If you look at mortality across the globe, clearly 2021 is going to be one of the worst years in history. Now, the American cancer statistics just came out. They're on Focal Point Substack. And, cancer overall is about the same, slightly down. But the ones that are advancing are the most common cancers. So in women, it's breast cancer, and in men, it's prostate cancer.
So Dr. McCullough warns that spike proteins, no matter whether they came from the virus or were injected into you from the messenger RNA vaccines, those spike proteins can persist for months, even longer. Not just in the bloodstream, but accumulating in places like the brain and heart and reproductive organs and kidneys and more. He's raising serious concerns about spike-triggered immune dysfunction, myocarditis, autoimmune responses, and their potential link to long COVID. Here's the kicker. Mainstream medicine says these spike proteins vanish quickly, but Dr. McCullough asks, where's the tissue-level proof? If spike proteins are still circulating a year later, shouldn't we rethink what we're being told? He believes we're facing a silent burden, one that's not being addressed and certainly not being talked about enough. This isn't fear-mongering. It's about asking the right questions and demanding real answers. And that's exactly what we're here to do. And it's not just Dr. McCullough sounding the alarm. Another prominent voice, Dr. Patrick Soon, is raising the stakes even higher. He's not only a biotech entrepreneur and a cancer researcher, but he's also the inventor of breakthrough cancer treatments. Listen to what he has to say about the spike protein.
Well, what's really worrisome to me now is not just the rate, but the population in which it's increasing, i.e. the younger people. We're clearly seeing an increase in certain types of cancer like pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, and we're seeing it in younger people. But I never saw pancreatic cancer in children. The greatest surprise to me was a 13-year-old with metastatic pancreatic cancer and to me that was not only devastating, it emphasized the idea that we're seeing people with higher incidence of pancreatic cancer and younger. What was sad about this young boy, by the time he came to see us, he had exhausted all standards of care. By the time he came to see us, his body was ridden and he passed away. So seeing cancers now in younger people and almost a rise, like I don't want to call it a non-infectious pandemic, but this is what I think is going to worrisome in the world, not just in the United States, and it's really worrisome. It bothered me so much now. Dr. Stephen Day was a good friend who was trained with me at UCLA when I was at UCLA. He said, listen, Patrick, I'm now seeing an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old with colon cancer. We've never seen that. We're seeing now 30-year-old, 40-year-old ladies, young ladies with ovarian cancer. So this is a real phenomenon of a rise of cancer in young people, and really need to get to the bottom of that. I'm getting reports, they've even called it turbocharged cancer.
Yes, I've heard that phrase.
Right? I'm getting reports of that now, that people that have been in remission before even are now getting back the cancers and very rapidly progressing. If you really think about what the cause of cancer is, it's inability to die. Its inability to die is because it either hides from the cells that matter, i.e. your natural killer cells, your T cells, or, and this is what I'm really worried about, your body and the cancer has found a way to suppress your killer cells. Then I think you see this rapid progression because there's nothing stopping them. Well, I think if you look back of causes, ironically, when I was doing at UCLA, I was working on pancreas transplant where I want to immunosuppress the patient. And then I was working on cancer where I don't want to immunosuppress. I needed to understand the body's mechanism, and we have a crazy, wonderful, exquisite balance in our body. You have the yin and the yang of the killer cells, and these things called natural killer cells and T cells. Anything that threatens the body, whether the body has infection, if you have TB, you have HIV, if you have hepatitis, you have COVID, These cells are there to recognize these infected cells and kill it. And the moment either the tumor find a way to hide from these cells, or your body's or the tumor causes these cells to be suppressed, you've lost your protection. And so the question then is, how do we understand this balance? How do we increase the killers and how do we decrease the suppressors? But that's I think is what's happening in our body. We have these perturbations, but we're in equilibrium. What knocks you out of balance basically is inflammation. Cancer is all about the immune system. So if you activate the immunosuppression system, you get more cancer. So then the fundamental root cause is what's activating that immune system. What we know about virally induced cancers is well established. We know that if you get hepatitis, you get liver cancer. Hepatitis is a virus infection. We know if you get human papillomavirus, HPV, you get cervical cancer. If you get HIV, you get Kaposi sarcoma. We call that oncogenic viruses in medical terms, meaning viruses that are induced carcinogenic. And the hallmarks of an oncogenic virus is, one, it must persist. And why? Because it continues to create inflammation. And why? With inflammation, you get suppression because your body's trying to suppress it. It must inhibit the thing called P53 that's in your body to try and protect your body from not having cancer. If it persists and causes inflammation and inhibits P53, it begins to have the hallmarks of an oncogenic virus. So then the question is, does COVID, whether it come from the vaccine, which is the spike protein vaccine, or from the infection, which is spike-driven, that gets into every cell of our body? That's why you have brain fog, because it disrupts the blood vessels of the brain and causes mitochondrial dysfunction. That's why in the colon, which is a high, in the GI tract is a high ACE2 receptor. That's why pancreas is a high ACE2 receptor, where that's why you people have, in the heart, you have dysfunction. You've seen young people have sudden heart attacks all of a sudden. You see young people with pancreatic cancer all of a sudden. You see young people with colon cancer all of a sudden. Is it by coincidence that post-COVID infection, post-COVID vaccine, we're seeing all these events where we know the spike protein goes there? I don't think so. I think it's not a coincidence.
So Dr. Soon warns that spike proteins from both the virus and the messenger RNA vaccines may remain in our tissues long after exposure, especially in places like the colon and the pancreas. Now, here's where it gets serious. These spike proteins latch onto key receptors in our organs. Think of them like docking stations. Once attached, they can disrupt important cellular functions, including something called P53. That's a natural tumor suppressor. Basically, it's your body's built-in cancer defense system. They also interfere with your mitochondria, the energy engines of your cells. Think of them as the energizer bunnies of your cells. When those break down, your cells become vulnerable. And there's another protein called TMPRSS2, which plays a role in prostate cancer biology. Spike proteins may activate it, raising even more red flags. Dr. Soon believes our immune warriors, the T cells and natural killer cells, are being put to sleep. That's a big deal. These are the cells that hunt down viruses and abnormal cells, including cancer. He's seeing a rise in aggressive cancers. He calls them turbo cancers because of how aggressive they are. He's seeing a rise in aggressive cancers among younger, otherwise healthy individuals. And autopsies are confirming that spike protein RNA can remain in the colon for years. Now, he's not saying spike proteins cause all cancers, but he's demanding urgent investigation. Because if our immune systems are being quietly shut down, we may be overlooking a massive piece of the puzzle. This is about awareness, about asking better questions, and about protecting our future. When powerful voices like these speak up, we start asking harder questions. And one of them is, why haven't we seen more research backing this up? That leads us into the next issue, how studies can mislead. Let me share something personal. Years ago, I was excited about the potential of omega-3s and St. John's wort, natural solutions with real promise. But then I saw the headlines, no benefit found, ineffective. And I thought, wait a minute, that doesn't match what I've seen in real life. Let's talk about omega-3 fatty acids. I had a customer come into my store years ago wanting to know if omega-3s would help lower their cholesterol. I had heard that it does have some effect on cholesterol, but I really didn't know the details back then. And I had to go and look it up in the references, and there was nothing in there about how much omega-3 that you need to take in order to lower cholesterol. So that put me on a search. I told him I'd get back with him and take a look at the research that's out there and see if I can find the answer. So I started digging in the research about omega-3 fatty acids. and I found all these articles in all these different scientific journals about the wonderful things that omega-3s do. One was lower cholesterol, help control blood sugar a little bit better, turn off inflammation in the body. It was just study after study after study. And then I found one study that said omega-3s did nothing. So that got me looking deeper. I remember in pharmacy school, I had a professor that told us, if you've got an overwhelming body of evidence that says one thing, and you find this article that's outlying that says something completely different, you got to ask 3 questions. Who sponsored the study? What did they stand to gain or lose based on the results of the study? And then what did they do different from all the others to get the results they had? So then I pulled that study. And what I discovered is it was funded by one of the statin companies. So right off the bat, we know statin drugs is a billion-dollar industry, so we know what they stand to gain or lose based on the outcome of the study. So that turned to the third step there. What did they do different from all the others? So I'll pull all the other studies and take a look at them. And in every single study, the patients received anywhere from 6,000 to 9,000 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids. But in this study from the drug company, they gave everybody 1,000 milligrams. They knew based on all the research that's over here that it takes 6,000 to 9,000 milligrams to show results, but they purposely gave 1,000 milligrams. Then they published the study in a major journal, sent it out with their pretty drug reps to all the doctors' offices, told the doctors that omega-3s did nothing and that the patients need to be put on their statin drug. Well, it didn't stop there. So the next study I came across was on St. John's wort, and it said St. John's wort does nothing. Well, St. John's wort is a herb that helps with depression, and it's been around for hundreds of years. In fact, in Europe at the time, it was one of the first-line treatments for depression. What we knew about St. John's wort was it takes anywhere from 30 to 90 days for it to build up in your system enough to have a positive effect. But here we have this study that said St. John's wort did nothing. So I asked those 3 questions. Who sponsored it? What did they stand to gain or lose? And what did they do different than what the common knowledge already was? So in this case, St. John's wort was sponsored by a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor company, SSRI. The SSRIs are drugs like Prozac and Paxil that are used for depression. In fact, in the United States, it was the #1 drug category that's being used for depression. So right off the bat, we know what they stand to gain or lose. They want to get their SSRIs into the European market and knock St. John's wort out and become the primary treatment for depression. So what did they do different in their study that produced no results compared to what we already know and what was common knowledge on St. John's wort? Well, in their study, they gave St. John's wort for 1 week. 1 week, 30 to 90 days for St. John's wort to build up enough in the system to be effective in depression. The SSRI drugs, Paxil, Prozac, those types of drugs, it also takes anywhere from 30 to 90 days to build up in the system to have any effect on depression. They both take the same amount of time, but the drug company knew that it takes 30 to 90 days. They gave it for 1 week, published their article that it did nothing, and sent that out to their drug reps and started telling the doctors in Europe that you need to get all your patients on the SSRIs because St. John's wort did nothing. They tested St. John's wort, a herb that takes months to work, in just 1 week. That's like judging a marathon runner after the first mile. And with omega-3s, they used a 1,000 milligram dose, but therapeutic effects often require 6,000 to 9,000 milligrams. So that's like trying to fill a swimming pool with a teacup. These examples reveal a pattern. Natural solutions are often marginalized, while pharmaceutical profits are preserved. So when official sources tell us that the spike proteins are short-lived, we ask, who funded the study? And what outcomes were they hoping for? Because if the goal is to protect the narrative, not uncover the truth, we need to look deeper. Let's take this one step further. Because if spike proteins are lingering, if immune confusion is real, then we have to ask, what happens next? What happens to the body when it's stuck in a state of low-grade inflammation, immune misfiring, and cellular stress? That's where the conversation shifts from spike protein exposure to long COVID. Now, long COVID isn't just a buzzword. It's a lived reality for millions of people. I suffer from it myself. People who recovered from the initial infection but never truly got their health back. They're dealing with brain fog, crushing fatigue, heart palpitations, digestive chaos, and a strange sense that the body just isn't the same. I bet many of you can relate. And here's the kicker. Many of these symptoms mirror what we've just discussed: immune dysfunction, mitochondrial breakdown, and lingering spike protein activity. So the question becomes, is long COVID just a mystery illness, or is it the downstream effects of an immune system that's been hijacked? Experts like Dr. David Petrino, Director of Rehabilitation Innovation at Mount Sinai Health System, and Dr. Leo Galen are now connecting the dots. They're seeing patterns: microclotting, mast cell activation, autonomic nervous system disruption, and they're sounding the alarm on what they call post-viral immune collapse. This isn't just about COVID anymore. It's about what COVID leaves behind. And if we want to protect our future, we need to understand what long COVID really is, how it's showing up, and what we can do to support recovery. So let's go there. Let's unpack the hidden layers of long COVID and explore the tools and strategies and transfer factor insights that may help us turn the tide. And while the science is sobering, the human stories are even more powerful, because long COVID isn't just a clinical term. It's a lived experience. And some of the most heartbreaking cases aren't found in textbooks. They're found in hospital break rooms, emergency departments, and quiet corners of homes where healthcare workers are still trying to recover. These are the people who showed up for us when the world shut down, who masked up, suited up, and risked everything to care for others. And now many of them are facing a new reality, one where their own bodies have become the battlegrounds. Let me introduce you to one of them, Dr. Jeffrey Singelman. He's not just a physician, he's an emergency room doctor, a professor, and one of the many healthcare workers who contracted COVID early on and never fully recovered. 3 months after his infection, he published a paper in JAMA describing his symptoms. At the time, he thought 3 months was a long haul, but now 5 years later, he's still living with long COVID. Fatigue, hypertension, palpitations, setbacks that came out of nowhere. He's had to adjust his work schedule, his lifestyle, even how he interacts with his family. And he's not alone. Dr. Singelman's story is part of a much larger picture, one that's affecting hundreds of thousands of frontline workers across the U.S. and beyond. Studies show that healthcare workers are disproportionately impacted by long COVID. Some estimates suggest that nearly 1 out of 10 have lingering symptoms. In the UK, nearly 1 in 5 National Health Service workers have been forced out of work because of it. And here's the heartbreaking part. Many of these professionals feel abandoned by the very systems they served. They're facing stigma, disbelief, and a lack of access to care. Some are still fighting for basic sick leave. Others have had to walk away from careers they loved because their bodies simply couldn't keep up. This isn't just a medical issue, it's a moral one. If our healers are hurting, and if long COVID is quietly dismantling the workforce we depend on, we need to pay attention. Because what Dr. Singelman and others are showing us is that long COVID isn't just a lingering cough or a little fatigue, it's chronic, life-altering. It's reshaping the future of healthcare. So let's talk about it. Let's explore what long COVID really looks like, why it's so misunderstood, and what we can do to support recovery, not just for healthcare workers, but for anyone navigating this invisible battle. And as we listen to stories like Dr. Singelman's, we begin to realize something deeper. Long COVID isn't just a physical battle, it's a psychological one too. Long COVID doesn't just affect the body, it affects the mind, and the numbers are staggering. A recent study published by The Lancet followed over 236,000 patients with long COVID. They found that nearly 2 out of 3 were diagnosed with either a neurological or a psychological condition within 6 months of their initial infection. That's more mental distress than we see in patients with Alzheimer's, cancer, diabetes, or heart disease. Dr. Anna Dickerman, a psychiatrist at New York Presbyterian Hospital, calls it a perfect storm. Long COVID triggers inflammation in the brain, releases cytokines, proteins that disrupt brain chemistry and fuel fatigue. Low motivation, emotional instability. Add insomnia, chronic pain, and isolation to the mix, and you've got a recipe for depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts. And here's the kicker. Many of these patients were healthy before COVID. Some were healthcare workers, some were parents, some were young adults just starting their careers. Now they're navigating a condition that affects their memory, their mood, their ability to work, and their sense of identity. Dr. Dickerman emphasizes that this isn't just psychological, it's biological, social, and systemic. People with long COVID often face job loss, financial stress, and stigma. And those with pre-existing mental health challenges or limited access to care, especially in the Black and Hispanic communities, are all at even greater risk. So what do you do? Right now, treatment options mirror those of traditional depression and anxiety: cognitive behavioral therapy, antidepressants, and gradual physical rehabilitation. But what's urgently needed is interdisciplinary care, where psychiatrists, pulmonologists, cardiologists, and primary care workers work together to treat the whole person, not just isolated symptoms. Because long COVID isn't just a lingering virus, it's a chronic condition, reshaping lives, and we need to meet it with compassion, clarity, and community. And that's exactly what we're doing here. So now that we've explored the problems, let's talk about some solutions. Because even in the face of immune disruption, there are steps that we can take. You already know the importance of foundational nutrients. In today's toxic, nutrition-depleted world, supplementation isn't optional, it's essential. Processed foods, depleted soils, environmental stressors, they all create massive nutritional gaps. And without the full spectrum of essential vitamins and minerals, your immune system is running on fumes. Getting those basics in place is step one. Now, if you're thinking this is overwhelming, you're not alone. Long COVID isn't just a lingering virus. It's a multi-system condition that affects the body, the brain, and the spirit. We've seen how it disrupts immune function, triggers autoimmunity, and even rewires mental health. Depression, anxiety, brain fog, chronic fatigues. These aren't just symptoms, they're signals, clues that something deeper is happening beneath the surface. So the question becomes, is there anything that we can do to help rehabilitate the immune system? That brings us to a fascinating area of research, one that's been quietly evolving for decades and may now be more relevant than ever. It's called transfer factors. Transfer factors is a small but mighty immune signaling molecule derived from colostrum and egg yolk. It's nature's original immune blueprint. It's been studied since the mid-20th century for its remarkable ability to transfer immune memory from one organism to another. Sounds like science fiction, but the research is real, and it's increasingly relevant. According to a review published in Science Direct, transfer factors have shown promise in enhancing cellular immunity, balancing Th1 and Th2 responses, regulating cytokine production, reducing inflammation, supporting immune surveillance across multiple systems. Now let's connect some dots. Long COVID is marked by immune dysregulation, antibody production, cytokine storms, and depleted T cell counts. These are all the exact domains where transfer factors have shown therapeutic potential. Here's the overlap. Long COVID challenge, immune exhaustion, and Th1, Th2 imbalance. Transfer factors restore balance and boost T cell activity. Challenge, autoimmunity. Transfer factors may suppress inappropriate immune response. Challenge, cytokine storm. Transfer factors modulate cytokine production and reduce inflammation. Viral persistence. Transfer factors enhance immune clearance of viral particles. Neural inflammation and brain fog. Transfer factors may reduce inflammation via immune modulation. Low CD4 and CD8 counts. Transfer factors stimulate lymphocyte proliferation. Multi-symptom systems. Transfer factors support systemic immune regulation. Now let's be clear, transfer factors aren't a magic bullet. Clinical trials are ongoing, but the immune level overlap with long COVID is striking, and it opens the door to new conversations about recovery, especially for those that are still often involved. So if you've been wondering, is there a way to help my immune system remember, respond, and recover? Transfer factors may be part of that answer. So let's get practical. If transfer factors hold promise for the immune recalibration, what exactly is it, and how does it work? Because unlike vitamins and minerals or herbs that simply nourish the body, transfer factors do something far more sophisticated. They act as immune messengers, carrying memory, not just molecules, teaching your immune system how to recognize, respond to, and remember threats with precision. They're found naturally in colostrum and egg yolk, and thanks to pioneering work from 4Life Research, they've been extracted, concentrated, and elevated into a new category of immune support. Here's how they work. Transfer factors help your T cells and your natural killer cells, the frontline defenders of your immune system, wake up, recognize threats, and respond with precision. Not with panic, not like the cytokine storm that we had in COVID, but with precision. Not with overstimulation, but with balance. Research shows they enhance the natural killer cell activity. They promote cytokine balance. They support Th1 and Th2 modulation. That's critical for resilience against viruses and autoimmune stress. In fact, 4Life studies show that transfer factors activate a variety of immune cells, the B cells, the T cells, the macrophages, and even boost natural killer cell activity in the presence of a health threat. And unlike many supplements that just add nutrients, transfer factors provide information. They teach your immune system how to stay alert, how to adapt, and how to recover. This is especially valuable if your immune system has been dulled or suppressed, just like Dr. Soong and Dr. McCullough have warned. Now, to help you visualize how this works inside the body, let's take a quick look at this animation from 4Life.
4Life Transfer Factor is clinically proven to activate the immune system within 2 hours. Transfer factors aren't vitamins, minerals, or herbs. They are molecules that transfer immune memory and knowledge from one cell to another. They teach your immune system to recognize, respond to, and remember potential threats. 4Life Transfer Factors provide vital information and education to your immune system. Let's follow the path of transfer factors through the body as they raise your immune IQ. First, the capsule travels down your esophagus to the stomach. There, it dissolves, and the individual transfer factor molecules are released. The transfer factor molecules enter the intestines, where they encounter groups of immune cells called Peyer's patches. Peyer's patches are concentrated centers of immune cells, and this is where 4Life Transfer Factor begins educating your immune system. They support many different kinds of immune cells, such as natural killer cells, T cells, B cells, macrophages, and more. When the transfer factors encounter an uneducated immune cell, they enter and educate that cell so it can better recognize, respond to, and remember health threats. From there, the newly educated cell creates more transfer factors to place on its surface. As educated immune cells come into contact with uneducated immune cells, they pass their immune system knowledge to those cells. The education spreads cell to cell until it reaches the lymph node, a concentrated source of immune system cells. Here, the educated cells work quickly to transfer their immune system knowledge, and soon all the cells in the lymph node have transfer factors to pass to the rest of the immune cells in your body. This transfer of immune knowledge spreads throughout the body until your entire immune system is fortified by transfer factors, making for a smarter and more vigilant immune system. Try 4Life Transfer Factor products today to raise your immune IQ.
This video showed how a single capsule begins activating immune cells within just 2 hours, highlighting the speed, the precision, and the intelligence of transfer factor molecules in action. And here's something beautiful. Nature designed this system. Mothers pass transfer factors to their babies through colostrum. Chickens pass it through egg yolk. It's immune education at its most primal. 4Life's patented extraction methods preserve this intelligence, making it available to us in supplement form. Transfer factors don't fight for your immune system. They train it to do what it was divinely designed to do, to defend, to adapt, and to restore. And in today's world, that kind of immune education may be one of the most powerful tools we have. If this message resonates with you, let's keep the conversation going. You're not alone in questioning the system. You're part of a movement I call Campaign for Life, restoring health and purpose through truth, science, and immune intelligence. This isn't just about spike proteins or long COVID. It's about reclaiming your health, your autonomy, and your voice. We've seen how transfer factors don't just support your immune system. They educate it. They help your body recognize, respond, and remember threats with precision. That's not hype. That's nature's design, backed by decades of research and protected by patents. And I have to tell you, I'm genuinely excited about the potential of transfer factors, not just as a product, but as a paradigm shift in how we think about immune health. This is the kind of science that changes lives. And if you see the potential too, I'm building a team, a community of truth tellers, educators, and wellness advocates who want to help spread the word. We're not here just to sell. We're here to serve, to empower, to restore. So here's your next step. Reconnect with the person who invited you here. They're your guide, your ally, and your first step toward immune clarity. Get started on transfer factors today for yourself. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Start with a conversation, a question, and a commitment to your health. Then join the movement. Share the story. Be a part of something bigger than a product. Be a part of a purpose. This presentation isn't the conclusion. It's the spark. Because when you combine truth with action, science with purpose, you don't just change healthcare, you change your life. And when enough of us do that together, we can change the world.